All right, hello and welcome. Today we're looking at a situation where we've got Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump pulling the same stuff they've been pulling, firing people who actually might get them into trouble. So you've been hearing clips of this through the last couple of days, and it can get really confusing about what we're talking about, because sometimes people are talking about walking dogs and other times they're talking about Saudi arms deals, and it's hard to put together what exactly is going on here. So let's take a step back, set the stage, and then we'll dive right into why this is just absolutely bananas, the what we're looking at. So for starters, the person who's been fired, and there's been a string of these getting fired, are what's called an inspector general. Okay, so for starters, what is an inspector general? So in the United States, the inspector general works in an agency, but they're supposed to be independent of that agency. So what's going on is they're put there to keep an eye on things and make sure that nothing weird is happening. Money's not being spent in inappropriate ways. People aren't acting in inappropriate ways. They're put there to keep an eye on things. Well, what we have is a separation of powers, right? We've got the three branches of government, and they're all supposed to be keeping an eye on each other. And then at the individual agencies, you have these inspectors general who can go through and, if there's a problem, hopefully they'll bring it forward. Well, Trump has been on a tear firing these inspectors general because it's obvious why, right? They're there to make sure that things are run appropriately. So when people are trying to do things that are not what they're supposed to do, then the easiest thing for Trump to do is just fire them. Well, this should be very concerning, right? Because this is one of those situations we've gotten into where, yes, the president does have the right to fire the inspectors general. But if you're doing it because there's bad dealings that may trace back to you or your administration, that falls into what we call corruption. So in the past, presidents just didn't feel like they could go forward with this. It was too risky to try to do this, or they didn't think it was honorable or whatever. But now we're just seeing the blatant dishonorable actions of saying, oh, this inspector general right here has been they've not been loyal to me, fire them. They're investigating something that comes back to me or one of my people, fire them, get rid of them. So what have we seen? We've seen a number of these inspectors general fired because they trace back to like handing over documents to Congress that was part of the Mueller investigation and the Ukraine scandal, fired, right? So inspectors general were fired for that. Then we had the inspector general that was fired. Remember, as part of the coronavirus bailout, there was supposed to be someone overseeing all of how this money is spent to make sure that it was done in an appropriate way. That inspector general fired. Why? Because they were going to get in the way of Trump and his administration just being able to do whatever they wanted without any kind of oversight. So that one fired. Okay, so the newest inspector general that was fired, it turns out was fired at the request of Mike Pompeo. And it turns out, it would seem, the reason that Mike Pompeo wanted this individual fired was because the inspector general on two separate situations was investigating Mike Pompeo. So again, we are in the situation where someone in the administration is being investigated. So they take that person who's doing the investigating and they fire them. They get rid of them. I mean, does it get any more corrupt than this? It's pretty bad. This is a pretty corrupt situation. These kind of actions that in the past people knew were going too far are now beginning to threaten the democracy, because once our checks and balances start falling apart, then what do we have, right? The government, we can get people in there that just do whatever they want, as we're seeing right now. So let's take a look at a video to try to put some of this in perspective.
New details emerging right now about the firing of the State Department's Inspector General Steve Linick. Just a little while ago, President Trump told reporters the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, himself asked for Linick's firing. CNN has learned Linick was investigating Pompeo's role in speeding up a multi-billion-dollar arms sale to Saudi Arabia, and Pompeo was refusing to cooperate. Here's what the president just said.
Explain, sir, why you decided to fire the Inspector General at the State Department?
Yeah, I don't know him at all. I never even heard of him, but I was asked to by the State Department, by Mike. So I don't know him, never heard of him, but they asked me to terminate him. I have the absolute right as president to terminate. I said, who appointed him? And they said, President Obama. I said, look, I'll terminate him. I was happy to do it. Mike requested that I do it. He should have done it a long time ago, in my opinion. He's an Obama appointment, and he had some difficulty. But I just don't know who he is. I don't know. I never heard his name.
All right, let's bring in our national security reporter, Kylie Atwood, and our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. Kylie, first of all, what are you learning? Walk us through the allegations, and they're simply allegations, nothing proven so far, the allegations against Secretary Pompeo.
Yeah, so we're being told right now that Secretary Pompeo refused to sit down for an interview with the State Department Inspector General as part of an investigation that they were doing into the Trump administration and Secretary Pompeo's position to declare an emergency last year, which then prompted the fast track of an $8 billion arms sale to Saudi Arabia. Now, that in doing so, they went around Congress because Congress had put a hold on those arms sales as a result of the Jamal Khashoggi murder. So that is part of what is being looked at here by these Democrats in the Senate and the House who are wondering precisely why Secretary Pompeo recommended that President Trump fire the Inspector General, Steve Linick. Now, there's another allegation that the Inspector General is also looking into some of the personal tasks that Secretary Pompeo asked a political appointee to do. So this is all part of the puzzle that they are trying to figure out right now.
It seems, Dana, that what the president has done in this particular case is pretty much in line with what we've seen him do over the past 3 years plus, isn't it?
It is 3 years. I mean, Wolf, we were just looking at it. How about the last month? It's really remarkable. And we've said so many times during the Trump years that this is not normal. This is one of those times where that should be in flashing neon lights. It is not normal for a president of the United States to fire any inspector general, never mind 4 inspectors general within the span of about 4 to 5 weeks, which is what we have seen here. The first couple seemed pretty clear. It was retribution for impeachment.
Okay, so let's keep track. There's 2 separate things. This is why it gets confusing when you're hearing in the news. And one sounds a little bit silly, but when you think about it, it is actually serious. So we have one that is about an $8 billion arms trade to Saudi Arabia, which should have had Congress be a part of that. But they declared an emergency. They were able to go through and get the deal done by going around Congress. So again, it's that balance of powers, finding ways to get for the presidency to not ever have to deal with Congress. Not really a great thing going on here. So there was an investigation into that. Was that an appropriate way of handling the situation? Then we have this other one of someone at the department being told to do personal errands for Mike Pompeo. Things like walking the dog, doing dishes, laundry, stuff like this, which sounds a little silly at first. You keep hearing in this news, wait, he was having people walk a dog, and then all of a sudden that's part of an investigation? Well, when you're using public funds, you're using our taxpayer dollars to have someone do your personal business, yeah, that's inappropriate, and it's against the law, and it shouldn't be happening. So there's 2 legitimate cases that the Inspector General was looking into about Mike Pompeo, and then he gets him fired. So, it's pretty clear what's going on here. And Pompeo is coming out and saying he didn't know, which I find really, really hard to believe. Basically, I don't believe it, right? He's saying, well, usually I find out about these things as they go public. I find it hard to believe that he wasn't informed by someone in, the people working for him that he was under investigation. And it's all just a big coincidence that he went out of his way to recommend to have this person fired who had 2 separate investigations into Mike Pompeo. It stretches credulity. Okay. All right. Let's check out another clip here.
We're following breaking news on the firing of the State Department's Inspector General, Steve Linick. President Trump telling reporters at the White House just a little while ago, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, asked him to fire Linick, and he did. CNN has learned Linick was investigating Pompeo's role in fast-tracking a multi-billion-dollar U.S. arms sale to Saudi Arabia, and Pompeo was refusing to cooperate. Here's what the president said.
Explain, sir, why you decided to fire the Inspector General at the State Department?
Yeah, I don't know him at all. I never even heard of him, but I was asked to by the State Department, by Mike. So I don't know him, never heard of him, but they asked me to terminate him. I have the absolute right as president to terminate. I said, who appointed him? And they said, President Obama. I said, look, I'll terminate him. I was happy to do it. Mike requested that I do it. He should have done it a long time ago, in my opinion. He's an Obama appointment, and he had some difficulty. But I just don't know who he is. I don't know. I never heard his name.
All right, let's bring in our senior national security correspondent, Alex Marquardt. Alex, walk us.
So let's pause for just a second, because the only real answer that Trump could give about why he fired this individual seemed to be that he was an Obama appointee. So apparently that's all that matters, right? You got these people that have worked for the government for a very long time under different presidents, but somehow because this person was an Obama appointee, it's okay to just get rid of him. That's all I need to know about the situation, is that Obama put him there, so I'm going to undo it. I'm going to reverse it. That's all he needs to know. That should tell you something about his leadership style, about how much thought is going into the decisions that he makes. Oh, Obama put him there? Well, we got to undo everything Obama's ever touched, so we got to fire these Obama appointees. Not even like a reason. Trump couldn't even lay out, oh, here's the reason that this individual did this, and so that's why I'm going to fire him. Just, oh, no, they told me he's an Obama appointee. That's all I need to know.
Walk us through what the Secretary of State is accused of doing here.
Well, Wolf, there were two investigations that the Inspector General Steve Linick was carrying out in looking into Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The one that you just mentioned about that Saudi arms sale, he refused to sit down with Linick's office, with the Inspector General's office. And essentially what happened was the Trump administration had declared an emergency and carried out that sale of $8 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia. That declaration of an emergency allowed the Trump administration to circumvent Congress. So that was met with quite a bit of an uproar in Congress. Of course, that was tied back, Wolf, you'll remember well, to the killing of the Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. That was tied to the Crown Prince. And so Linick was looking into that arms sale, that fast-tracked arms sale, Pompeo refusing to sit down with his office. Now, Pompeo did speak with the Washington Post earlier today. He was asked about Linick. He did not specifically say why Linick was fired, saying only more broadly, I went to the president and made clear to him that Inspector General Linick wasn't performing a function in a way that we had tried to get him to, that was additive for the State Department. Wolf, that language that we had tried to get him to is pretty interesting, because inspectors general are supposed to act independently of the departments and the agencies that they are working in. Now,
right, so we talked about that at the beginning of the video. Remember, the whole point of the Inspector General is to be there and oversee that everything is acting appropriately. So if they're supposed to take orders, if they were supposed to take orders from the department itself, then that means they would be totally controllable. This is exactly the kind of thing that the Trump administration doesn't like, is people who can catch them, people who can figure out what they've done is not appropriate and create friction for them, or worse, right? So that's why there's this rooting out of anyone who can actually catch the Trump administration in wrongdoing. We just fire them. We just get rid of them. Just get them out there, and either don't replace them or replace them with people who will just allow you to do whatever you want. So there's you might think, well, if he was working in this department and Pompeo's running that, then why didn't he just do what Pompeo said? That's not his job. His job is to act independently so that they can catch when people at the top, like Pompeo, are engaging in wrongdoing. It can be caught by the Inspector General, right? So there's your checks and balances. There's no way to look at the situation and say, oh, there's no there, right, that they like to throw out there. There's a there, right? This story, the likelihood that this is all just a bunch of coincidences is too far out there, okay? Clearly things were going on that shouldn't have been happening. The Inspector General was following up on it, so the easiest thing to do was to fire him and put all this to bed.
now, the first investigation was that Saudi arms sale. The second investigation that Linick was carrying out into Pompeo was more of a personal nature. He was looking into whether Pompeo had used a political appointee for personal tasks, whether this appointee had carried out things like a dinner reservation, had picked up dry cleaning, had walked his dog. And that is according to the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Eliot Engel. And now you have certainly lots of Democrats crying foul. Engel and his Senate counterpart, Senator Menendez of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, both launching an investigation to determine whether or not this firing of Linick was illegal. Wolf.
Yeah, I'm going to play the.
Okay, so small point. Let's look at a small point here. If you're a private citizen and you want to hire a personal assistant to do things like walk your dog and wash your clothes and stuff like that, that's fine. You can pay someone to do that. But when you're a government employee, the government is not supposed to be paying for people to do your personal business, walking your dog, stuff like that. It's not allowable. I know it sounds silly. You're not supposed to do it.
Reasons by the Secretary of State. Listen, Alex, to this.
And now I have you telling me about dog walking, washing dishes. And you know what? I'd rather have him on the phone with some world leader than have him wash dishes because maybe his wife isn't there or his kids are there. You know, what are you telling me? It's terrible. It's so stupid. You know how stupid that sounds to the world? Unbelievable.
So you can see Trump is making the case that I've been talking about throughout this video. He's saying, we're talking about walking a dog. This is ridiculous. Why are we talking about this? Why is this important? There's much more important things to talk about. It's important because you're using government funds incorrectly. Okay. And yeah, walking, this isn't like lives are on the line, but it's improper use of funds in the government and it shouldn't be done. Right. So there should be an investigation into it. They should look into it and decide what to do about it. Right. Now, this other one with the Saudi Arabia deal, that's a little more serious, right? Even more serious than the first one. And that should be looked into and followed up on. That's the whole point of the Inspector General, is to get that taken care of and to make sure that everyone is acting in a legitimate way. All right, thanks for checking out the video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can check out all the videos as they become available, and we'll see you in the future.